everyone, welcome back to Homestead in a Box. My name is Leah and I'm super grateful to have you. It's been a minute since I've been on here. If you've been here for a while, you know that in the wintertime content kind of slows down. If you're new here, welcome. I'm super excited. I talk a lot about gardening and homesteading. There's several new followers here, so thank you all so much for being here. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks on how to grow healthy cabbage. Cabbage is something I struggled with in the very beginning, but it's something I knew I wanted to grow a lot of because my husband and I, we love cabbage. It's taken me probably 2 seasons to learn how to grow it successfully here in Oklahoma, and I have grown it now for 2 seasons successfully with heads forming, being able to utilize it. The cabbage I grew in the early spring, I made sauerkraut out of. Honestly, I put too much salt in it, but I still have it. It was just too salty for me, but I did make sauerkraut, fermented that, and this cabbage we're going to be storing. The cabbage that I'm growing now, hopefully I'll be harvesting it probably mid-January. And however, cabbage is the first thing I think about when I think about my early spring garden. Okay, I live in Oklahoma, and one thing that I have to take into consideration when planting cabbage is the time and when I'm planting it and making sure I'm planting it at the right time. If you plant it too late, your cabbage will bolt because it gets too hot here in Oklahoma. We really don't know that there's such thing as a spring here. So it kind of goes from cold to hot really quick, and you'll spend all this time babying your cabbage and no heads will form because it just got too hot. So knowing when to plant them, knowing how to plant them, how to space them, all these things are really important. And today that's what I want to talk to you about. So let's go check out my cabbage and just dive right into it. All right, here in Oklahoma, you basically have 2 opportunities when to be able to grow cabbage without it being too hot. And that is in the fall and winter garden, and then in the early spring garden. Something to take into consideration, like what I have going here in the fall and winter garden, is like I have succession planted a few of these cabbage, so some are bigger than others. But the number one thing you need to know about planting in the fall and winter is that the hours of daylight time are a lot shorter. The cabbage can withstand the cold. It's frost hardy. However, it needs a certain amount of daylight hours, like anything else does, to be able to grow it at the proper speed of time, I guess you could say. And in the winter time, it takes a little bit longer for your cabbage to form heads than what it does in the early spring. Cabbage like it between, anywhere from 60 to 55, they grow okay. 60 to 65, they grow real good. Our temperatures right now here in Oklahoma have been pretty warm for it being December 19th. We've been ranging in the 50s. Last night got down to low of 25. And when I show you the close-up on these cabbage, I'll show you where a little bit of the cold temperatures are affecting them. So it's kind of a gamble. No matter when you plant in Oklahoma, it's a gamble. If you want to skip the gamble of the frost and plant in early spring, that's another time I highly recommend planting them. The only thing about planting in early spring is you have a lot more pest pressure than what you have right now in the winter. A lot more pest pressure. And again, it's super important to know when to plant those cabbage out, because in Oklahoma, we don't really have a spring. We go to straight summer, and it's really discouraging to put a lot of hard work into growing it and a head doesn't form because it gets too hot. So definitely know your dates, know your your last estimated frost date, know how many days that it takes your cabbage to go from seed to harvest, and pull out a calendar and do your dates. That's how you're gonna know when to plant out. If you follow me on social media, I pretty much have charts floating around, or I always post of when I'm planting my things and things like that. And I'm in southeastern Oklahoma, and so far the last couple years, my dates have been pretty good. I've been able to get cabbage. Last year at the end of spring, when I was moving into summer, I really had issues with cabbage worms other than the turkeys. The turkeys kind of got in and devoured my cabbage, but even after that my cabbage heads formed, but I did have more pest pressure from cabbage worms. So I have the netting that I implement, things like that. Even now with the temperatures being as warm as they have, you can see on some of these leaves here, I'm going to show you where you can see where there's been some type of a pest in here. So let me show you up close to these so you can see the heads forming in here. To keep in mind when planting cabbage is they need adequate spacing. Most people plant cabbage out with transplants. They either buy transplants or they start them themselves. But you definitely need an adequate amount of spacing between 12 to 18 inches between each transplant. Because as you see here, I mean, these leaves are massive. Here's my hand on these leaves. So they're pretty big, humongous leaves. I mean, that's really big. So they definitely need spacing. They love well-drained soil. Make sure that your soil, you have good soil and it's draining water pretty well. They love being fed any type of organic matter. In fact, I need to come in and probably feed these cabbage. You see here where they're starting to form heads on the inside. Like that's a head I'm grabbing there. I'm really excited about it. They look like they're really healthy. As you see here, kind of on the edges, let me zoom you in. Okay, there on the edges there, you kind of see that discoloration. That's from it being so cold. It's just gotten so cold the last few nights and we don't have any protection on them at all. Last night it got down to 25. All right, moving over here to a smaller head of cabbage. You see here, this is a smaller head. I planted this much later than what I planted the bigger heads over there. There's a small head here and then a small head there. You can see something has definitely been in here nibbling at this. Even though we have the cloth, the screen, the netting over it, something's still been in here. And there's really no telling what it is. But I definitely need to come in, put some more leaf mulch in here, feed these. So I know these babies right here will probably not we will not be able to harvest them until early spring. All right, those smaller heads of cabbage, I am very well aware that I'm not gonna harvest those and until probably like January, February, and probably gonna have to actually take a little bit extra care of them more into January and February to protect them from frost, just because I did plant them out a little bit later than what I should have. However, it's an experiment. Gardening in general is an experiment. No matter who you are, no matter where you are at in your journey, it's literally an experiment. With every seed that you put in the ground, you're taking a chance. With every, plant that gets to be these big, I mean, every day they survive is another day they survive. I mean, it's really all just an experiment for every single body. It doesn't matter who you are, but you won't know if you don't plant them out. These cabbage, I won't know if the cabbage is going to survive and be able to give me a good harvest planting them out late like I did unless I try it. And so I tried it. These two cabbages, there's three of them here. I planted out like a month later than the rest of these just to see if they will survive here in Oklahoma all winter long. So next year if they do, we know that we can harvest cabbage all winter from our front yard. That's what's important to us, is being able to grow food that we eat in the comfort of our front yard, being able to walk out the door and going and grabbing it. And finding what works for us is an experience, is an experiment itself. I say this all the time: what works for us may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for us. But you have to get out there and you have to try what's going to work for you. And I know that these are the things that I've tried and that have been proven true when it comes to cabbage. You have to know when you're planting them out, know what temperatures they like, know your dates so you know when to plant them. Make sure you have healthy transplants to plant out. And then just, they like well-drained soil. They love organic matter. Try feeding them a fertilized organic compost tea or something once a month. I'm going to come in and leaf mulch this bed today. So I'm going to get them good and covered up with some leaf mulch for the cold nights that we are moving into. But just try it, try it. Let me know down below if you have had success with cabbage, if you have not had any success with cabbage. What are some great varieties that you grow that you could recommend? I'm really looking for a good red cabbage to grow for next year. I really love coleslaw, and the thought of being able to just harvest the red and the green cabbage from the front yard, make homemade coleslaw, sometimes I just got ideas in my head of things I want to accomplish when it comes to in the kitchen, and so I'll just grow that. So let me know down below what are some great varieties that you grow, that you recommend me to grow, and or if you've had success growing cabbage, or if you haven't had success growing cabbage. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with me today. I've missed you. I've missed YouTube. Right now, as we are at the point now to where it's time to cultivate new spots to grow food. It's time. I mean, last night I'm already getting in, you know, when I'm planting crops, when I'm preparing the beds, when I'm planting the seeds, you know, and it is that time. And cabbage is something that's always early spring on my list, and so I wanted to make this video for you all to be prepared for early spring, to have a few tips and tricks up your sleeve on how to grow successful cabbage. Thank you all so much for coming and being here with me. I'm sending you good vibes. Send some good vibes to somebody that you know, and I'll see y'all next time.